Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about when you should be sending your book to your editor, what that even means, and what my process has looked like. When I finished writing my first novel back in 2021, I didn't send it to my editor until 2024, and now here we are in 2026, and I'm still working through edits, rewrites, and reworking parts of my story. So if you've ever wondered, am I taking too long? When is my book actually ready for editing, and what does that even mean to send it to an editor? You're not alone. And today I'm going to talk you through exactly how to know when your manuscript is ready and what that process looks like. I'm sending it to an editor and doing your own self-edits. I'm going to walk you through the entire thing from the beginning to the end. So let's get into it. All right, first I want to share a little bit about my process because I think it'll help you feel less alone in yours. So you've probably heard that there are two types of writers. We have our pantsters and our planners. After discovering outlining, I outlined my entire novel and wrote about 80,000 words in one summer. Planning works really well for me. I'm 100% a planner, but no matter what type of writer you are, editing still has to follow a process. Here's the general editing workflow I like to follow. So first you're going to finish your first draft, obviously, and then you're going to take a break. This could be a few weeks or even a couple months. After that, you're going to start self-revisions. Then you're going to get a beta reader or two to look at it. You're going to revise again, do a proofread. Then it's going to go to a professional developmental editor. Then you will implement those edits after they get back to you. Then you're going to get into line editing and copy editing, do more of your own revisions, another round of beta readers, a final proofread, and then you're done. Now, I'm going to jump into these all more deeply so that you understand what I'm talking about, but I'm currently in the process of implementing developmental edits, and honestly, it has taken a lot longer than I expected. I've added a lot of new ideas, reworked a lot of different sections, and that's okay. Sometimes it just takes time. It's not going to be something where they get back to you and it is just like that, and then you were on to the next thing. This process isn't rigid either. It is a guideline, not a rule book, so make sure to remember that. One of the biggest misconceptions I see is that your manuscript has to be perfect before you send it to an editor. And it doesn't, it really doesn't. Editing exists because your book is not perfect yet. That is the whole reason you are sending it to an editor. You can still have notes to yourself in the margins. You can have scenes that still feel weak and you need to revisit, or you can even have moments where you just know you need improvement, and that is completely normal. What actually matters is that your story is complete. That is the topmost thing that matters right now, and we'll go into the other stuff so you know for sure you're not sending your book to an editor that really should not be sent yet, but the first and foremost thing is just having a complete book. From start to finish, you have everything in between. There's no major plot changes, but you have chapter 1 all the way to the very end. You need to have a clear beginning, middle, and end, and your main conflict needs to be there. Your character arcs need to be visible, and it doesn't have to be flawless. You just need that solid foundation. It also really helps to understand the difference between drafting and editing, and proofreading. Honestly, drafting is going to be creating. That is when you are writing your book. That is when you are sitting down and fleshing out all those chapters. Editing is in where you are going back and you're refining those chapters. You're finding little areas that maybe they just need to be reworked, rewritten. You are really polishing your story in that first draft. And then proofreading is that polishing point. A lot of times we forget that when you are first drafting your book, it does not have to be a polished, perfect thing. It does not have to be something where you can take that first draft, give it over to someone else, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Like, no, that first draft is going to be very messy. My first draft was, honestly, it seems like a completely different book from the one I have now that is closer to publication. So just remember that your first draft is going to be completely different from the editing process and completely different from the proofread. So don't worry if that first draft is just not at those stages yet, and that is okay. Another thing to remember is that when you're drafting, the only goal you should have is to finish it. don't be like, oh, I need to go back and perfect and edit these chapters before I move on. Don't even worry about going back and editing. I think that is something I myself, because I am an editor, when I finish writing something, my first thought is I want to go back and I want to really perfect the beginning before I move to the middle and end. And that isn't always bad to like go back and reread some sections, but I've really tried to be telling myself that first and foremost, I need to just write out those chapters. They can be messy, but I really just need to get them written. And so messy writing is totally okay. Imperfect scenes are totally okay. And perfection does not belong in the drafting stage. All right, so how do you actually know when your manuscript is ready for editing? Here are a few clear signs that I have found very helpful. One, you finish your first draft. That is the utmost important thing you do. If nothing else, you need to have that first draft finished. The second thing that I listed in the beginning of this video is that you should step away from it for a little while. So that you can come back to it with fresh eyes. This is something that I never thought of before until actually watching Abby Emmons' YouTube videos, and she had talked about her drafting process, and she had mentioned how she has a decompression time where she just leaves her book aside for a little while and she comes back to it later. I think this is actually very helpful. I have spent chunks of time where it's just like a couple weeks not looking at my book, or I've even gone so far as a couple months, which has been really difficult, but I've been able to come back to it and I noticed that I have a fresh perspective on my book, fresh eyes, a fresh mind, and I'm just able to look at scenes and really rework them a lot better than if I had just finished my book and I automatically just go back to the beginning and start editing. I think it is just very good to have that decompression time, and it really will help improve your editing. After you have that decompression time, I think it is very important to come back and do at least one round of self-editing. Self-editing is so important. It's where you're cleaning up repetition, fixing obvious issues, and tightening weak areas. I think a lot of authors kind of forget that they, in many ways, have to be their own editor. Obviously, it is so very important that before you publish your book, you are sending it to someone else who has never read it before and is a professional and can edit and help you. But as a writer, we all need to be our own editors. And it's not like you have to be a professional. You don't have to go study stuff. You don't even have to really enjoy it, but at least knowing certain principles and rules that you can implement in your own writing and go back yourself. I think that is so helpful, and it really helps when you do send it to an editor, already kind of knowing the areas that you need help with and being able to help yourself in those areas. An editor can do a lot. They can suggest a lot. They can hold your hand through it a lot of the times, but ultimately it comes down to you being able to really find the difference between having an editor completely redo everything and you being able to really work it out yourself. I think that is really what brings good writing to great writing, even because ultimately this is your book, you're writing, and we want it to stay as close to your voice and original tone as possible. And so obviously grammar and punctuation, things like that that are fixed by a professional, it's going to help, but we really need to keep that voice. And so if you're able to learn little editing tips, that is so very helpful for your writing. And if you're looking to become a better editor yourself, I offer on my website a lot of different free downloads and little courses where you can learn little tips and tricks that just really help your overall writing that I think are really important. So be sure to check that out. I do a lot of blog posts on editing tips and writing tips that I hope you will find useful. The next step in our list of kind of going down and looking at that editing process is having someone else read it. I think it's super important to have another set of eyes on your work, someone who has never read it before and can just give you some fresh ideas. They'll catch things that you would have never noticed. I think this is super important after that self-edit that you have done, where you just have a set of eyes, give you new ideas and new perspectives before you send it off to the next step of having a professional editor come in. And so, yeah, definitely find someone that will be another set of eyes. And if you're curious on how you even find that person, that isn't just your mom, grandma, or your brother or sister, I would love to make a video about that in the future, because I have found several ways where I have found beta readers for my work that are absolutely thrilled to read my entire book with no reward, like nothing else I'm giving them other than this book for them to read. And so yeah, if you're interested in a video on that, let me know in the comments, because I would love to make one on that. Another thing I really wanted to talk about was just common mistakes I see writers make with this. Editing while they're drafting is one of them. This is before the story is fully formed. It is very important, like I said in the beginning, to have that entire first draft already fleshed out. You need to have a beginning, a middle, and end. Also, if you see the little tufts of hair in the bottom of the screen, I have my puppy with me. He always wants to be on my lap, so don't mind him. But anyways, another thing I see is on the opposite side of it, writers will wait until everything feels perfect before sending it to their editor, which usually leads to them almost never sending it at all, or just waiting way too long. This is something that I struggled with for a very long time, because I spent a lot of time just editing and reworking my novel, and I think that it is something that is kind of stuck in me just because I am an editor and I have that perfectionist eye for my writing. But it is something that I highly suggest that just don't get too far stuck into having to have it perfect before you send it to that editor, because ultimately your editor is supposed to be there to help you and help be that person alongside you to polish your manuscript. It is not supposed to be all up to you. You're the author, you're the one that is creating the great story, the voice, the story that readers do not want to put down, but ultimately we need that editor to come alongside us and just show us the areas that can do better, need to be reworded. And if we are not a grammar junkie like I am, then you might even need them to help you with knowing where to put those periods or those commas, or just tweaking the little things. Another mistake that I've seen a lot of writers make is skipping editing entirely and just relying on spell check. Tools can help. There's a lot of tools that I use that I want to make a later video on with those tools that have helped me a lot in my writing, but they cannot replace a thoughtful revisions pass. If there is someone who is an editor, having someone like read your work and be able to give you those tips and tricks and ideas and their own personal thoughts is just going to be so much greater than having spell check or a robot. They're not going to be able to help you in the same ways. So just keep in mind that at some point, if your goal is to publish a work of yours, you have to hire an editor. That is just there's no question about it. Editing is so vitally important for having something that you're sending out into the world that people will want to read, and that they'll even see you with respect as an author, knowing that being able to see while they're reading that, wow, this person actually has good writing. They're not seeing errors, flaws. That just kind of makes them think not as highly of your writing, and you want them to think like, wow, this is a story that's not only good, but also just the way it is written, the way it is formatted is also very nice and just makes the story that much better. Alrighty, so to kind of recap everything that I talked about in this video, your manuscript is likely ready for editing if you've, number one, finished the first draft, your story is complete, your major plot changes are done, you've done at least one self-edit, so vitally important, and then someone else has read it. And if not, that is okay. These are all little different steps that you can take to get to that goal of sending it over to your editor. But this is just the little steps that I would suggest you take right now, and are very easy and simple, and will help you tremendously in your writing career and just your process to get that book of yours to an editor. This will help your editor out a ton. This will help your sanity with not having your editor come back and be like, okay, here's 500 pages of things you need to fix, notes I have for you, and then also it just helps not spending a ridiculous amount of money that isn't necessary. Maybe you won't need a developmental editor because you have someone else read it, and the way your story is you just feel like there is nothing major like that you need a developmental editor, and then you just move on to line and copy editing. That is totally fine. Or maybe you're just going to end up saving money because your editor is not going to have to continue to do line after line after line edit because you keep adding chapters or having to go back and flesh out areas that then they have to go back and edit again. So yeah, it's just very important to have those steps in mind, and hopefully you guys found this helpful and you're able to kind of see the steps you need to take to get to where you can send your book to an editor. I know for me personally, it is very helpful to see almost like check boxes of what I need to do next. And sometimes it can feel like, oh my goodness, do I need to send it to an editor? Do I need to keep working on it for 3 years? Like, it can be all over the place and every author is different. So hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. Let me know in the comments below if it was. Also let me know what videos you want to see in the future. I definitely came up with a lot of ideas for future videos just by this one. So let me know. Be sure to like and also subscribe if you want to see my later videos. I'm excited to share more with you guys. So thank you for being here, and I hope you found this helpful.